In times of scarcity, our grandparents knew how to make the most out of what little they had. Their kitchen creativity not only filled bellies, but also birthed some unique, delicious sandwiches. These 20 forgotten poor man's sandwiches may sound unusual today, but they were essential meals during the Depression, wartime, and beyond. Let's dive into these nostalgic bites. The peanut butter and jelly sandwich is now a classic childhood favorite, but it started as a practical and affordable protein source. First appearing in cookbooks around 1901, it became a Depression-era staple when peanut butter provided inexpensive protein and homemade jellies preserved seasonal fruit. During World War II, both peanut butter and jelly were part of military rations, and returning soldiers helped make the combination popular across the country. The genius of the PB&J lies in its simple completeness: sweet and salty, creamy and fruity, with protein and carbs all in one sandwich. To make the most of limited supplies, families spread peanut butter all the way to the edges, saving the jelly for the center. Over time, regional variations popped up: grape jelly in the Northeast, strawberry preserves in the South, and apple butter in Appalachia, each reflecting the local fruits available during hard times. What started as a practical meal became a beloved comfort food, with a history as rich as its flavor. The mayonnaise and banana sandwich. The mayonnaise and banana sandwich may sound odd to us today, but for many Southern families during hard times, it was a practical and filling meal. This unlikely combo provided cheap protein from the mayo and vital nutrients from the bananas. Depression-era mothers would carefully slice ripe bananas lengthwise and layer them on soft white bread, spread with just the right amount of mayonnaise to add a creamy richness that complemented the banana's natural sweetness. If sugar or honey was available, a light sprinkle would make it feel like a special treat. Elvis Presley was known to enjoy a variation of this sandwich, adding peanut butter for extra flavor. The mix of creamy, tangy mayo with the sweet, soft banana created a surprisingly balanced taste. The onion sandwich. The onion sandwich might seem harsh at first, raw onion between slices of bread, but it was a vital sustenance for countless workers in the early 20th century. Onions were cheap, easy to find year-round, and packed with both flavor and nutrients when other foods were scarce. The secret to making it more palatable: thinly slicing the onion, soaking the slices in cold water to take off some of the sharp bite, and patting them dry before layering them on bread spread with butter or drizzled with vinegar. A sprinkle of salt and pepper was all it needed to complete this humble but surprisingly flavorful meal. Coal miners and factory workers often carried these sandwiches in their lunch pails, the strong odor acting as a deterrent to anyone tempted to steal their food. Beyond the taste, the sandwich provided energy through simple carbs and helped fend off winter colds, thanks to the onion's natural antibacterial properties. Bologna Sandwich. The Bologna Sandwich is one of America's most iconic budget meals, loved for its simplicity and affordability. It features thin slices of processed bologna on white bread, often with a dab of yellow mustard. During the Great Depression, when families were struggling, bologna earned the nickname "poor man's steak." It was a way to enjoy a hearty meal without breaking the bank. A single slice of bologna could be stretched across bread to create the illusion of a full meal. The best sandwiches had bologna that was slightly fried, its edges curled up, holding just the right amount of mustard or mayonnaise. It wasn't about fancy ingredients. It was about the small touches that made the sandwich feel special. Some families even scored the edges to stop the bologna from curling up, while others fried it to a crispy perfection. The bread and butter sandwich. The bread and butter sandwich is the epitome of simplicity, especially during tough times. Just 2 slices of bread with a layer of butter, nothing more. But this humble sandwich told a story of resilience and making do with what little was available. During periods of economic struggle, It wasn't uncommon for families to rely on this as a full meal. The secret to making it special? It was all in the small details. Butter softened just right, so it spread easily, a sprinkle of salt to bring out the flavor, or a gentle toasting that melted the butter into the bread. During wartime rationing, kids often found these in their school lunches. Some parents even got creative, cutting the sandwiches into fun shapes or pressing patterns into the butter to give it a little extra love. The Ketchup Sandwich. When the pantry was bare, the ketchup sandwich became a last resort meal that somehow won the hearts of children. Just 2 slices of bread with ketchup spread between them. This sandwich was a symbol of making do with what little was available. During the Great Depression, ketchup provided flavor and a hint of nutrition from tomatoes when fresh vegetables were out of reach. To make it feel like more of a meal, parents would sometimes toast the bread, and a sprinkle of sugar was added to sweeten the ketchup, turning it into a near dessert. In some school cafeterias during the 1930s, this was even served to kids. Depression-era children grew up with these sandwiches, and many carried on the tradition even as times improved. The Cucumber Sandwich. While we often associate cucumber sandwiches with fancy afternoon tea, they actually began as humble fare during tougher times. Thin slices of cucumber between 2 pieces of bread provided hydration and a cooling refreshment for workers during hot weather, especially when meat was too expensive. During the Great Depression, families made these sandwiches using fresh garden cucumbers in the summer, adding a light spread of butter and a pinch of salt. The cool, crisp cucumber was a welcome treat, particularly for farm workers in the heat. Some added a dash of dill or vinegar when available, elevating the flavor. Unlike many poor man's sandwiches that were meant to fill the stomach, the cucumber sandwich offered something different. It provided psychological refreshment, a rare moment of eating something light and fresh when most meals were heavy and starchy. The Tomato Sandwich. The tomato sandwich is a celebration of summer's bounty, enjoyed when garden-grown tomatoes are at their peak. Sliced thick and placed between 2 pieces of bread with a sprinkle of salt and pepper, this simple meal cost almost nothing but provided a seasonal joy that was eagerly anticipated each year. Southern families often added a light spread of mayonnaise, while Midwestern versions were made with butter. The key to a perfect tomato sandwich. Using tomatoes still warm from the sun, their juices soaking slightly into the bread, creating a messy yet glorious experience. During peak garden season, many would eat this sandwich daily until the first frost signaled the end of tomato availability. Which of these forgotten sandwiches would you love to try today? Let us know your favorite. The Peanut Butter and Pickle Sandwich. The peanut butter and pickle sandwich may sound odd, but it was a clever and surprisingly delicious creation during tough times. The creamy peanut butter and tangy, crunchy pickles provided a perfect balance of flavors, making it a satisfying option when resources were limited. Depression-era cooks discovered that the sharp acidity of dill pickles cut through the richness of peanut butter in a way that worked better than expected. In some regions, sweet pickles made their way into the mix, especially where families did their own canning. The combination of textures, smooth peanut butter with crisp, crunchy pickles, offered variety in a diet that often lacked excitement. This sandwich was a staple through the 1950s, particularly in rural areas where both ingredients were easy to find, either through home canning or as affordable pantry items. Even as times improved, many Depression-era children carried the flavors of their childhood into adulthood, keeping the peanut butter and pickle sandwich as a nostalgic connection to their past. The Tuna Salad Sandwich. When canned tuna became widely available in the early 20th century, it changed the game for budget-conscious eaters. Mixed with mayonnaise and sometimes finely chopped celery or onion, tuna salad turned a small amount of protein into enough to make several sandwiches. During World War II, when meat was rationed, tuna salad sandwiches became a patriotic alternative to beef. Navy wives, in particular, embraced these sandwiches, sometimes adding relish or hard-boiled eggs to stretch the filling even further. Churches and community gatherings often featured tuna salad sandwiches because they were cheap and could feed large groups. More than just a simple meal, the tuna salad sandwich symbolizes community resilience. It shows how, by sharing knowledge and creativity in stretching ingredients, neighborhoods came together to weather difficult times. The fried Spam sandwich. When Spam hit the market in 1937, it quickly became an affordable meat alternative during the Great Depression and wartime rationing. Thinly sliced and fried until crisp-edged, Spam on bread became a reliable staple for working-class families. During World War II, military personnel consumed vast quantities of Spam, and many brought their love for the product back home after the war. Often dressed with mustard or mayonnaise, the fried Spam sandwich's popularity grew far beyond its humble origins. In Hawaii, where Spam became particularly beloved during the military occupation, regional variations of the sandwich developed and continue to be enjoyed today. The Egg and Sardine Sandwich. When protein was scarce but essential for physical labor, the Egg and Sardine Sandwich offered maximum nutrition with minimal ingredients. Canned sardines, mashed with hard-boiled eggs and a splash of vinegar, created a filling meal rich in protein and omega-3 fatty acids. Immigrant communities, drawing from European traditions of fish preservation, embraced this sandwich for its affordability and nutritional value. It was a popular choice for factory workers and miners, fitting easily into lunch pails and providing sustained energy for long, demanding shifts. Some versions added finely chopped onion or pickles for extra flavor when available. The Bacon and Peanut Butter Sandwich. When a single strip of bacon had to stretch across an entire meal, the Bacon and Peanut Butter Sandwich was born. Often, just one crispy strip of bacon was crumbled and mixed into peanut butter, infusing the spread with smoky, savory flavor. During times of meat rationing, this sandwich allowed families to enjoy the taste of bacon while stretching their limited meat supplies. The salty, smoky bacon paired perfectly with the creamy richness of peanut butter, creating a satisfying combination that went beyond its humble ingredients. On special occasions, some families added honey or molasses to enhance the flavor. The Mayonnaise and Onion Sandwich. The Mayonnaise and Onion Sandwich was a simple yet bold meal that delivered big flavor when other ingredients weren't available. Thinly sliced raw onions, sometimes soaked in water to soften their sharpness, were layered with creamy mayonnaise between slices of bread. This sandwich became a favorite among factory workers, offering an affordable and filling option that provided enough energy for long physical shifts. It became especially popular with Southern textile mill employees and Midwestern manufacturing workers. Some added a sprinkle of black pepper or paprika when available to enhance the flavor. The bread and milk sandwich is perhaps the most basic and comforting meal, a humble creation that transcended its poverty origins. Slices of bread soaked in sweetened milk, sometimes with a sprinkle of sugar and pressed together, became a simple but satisfying meal when few alternatives existed. During the Depression, parents often served this as a makeshift dessert to children who had no access to traditional sweets. On special occasions, a dash of cinnamon was added, turning this basic sandwich into something almost cake-like. The bread and milk sandwich appears in Depression-era memoirs as both a symbol of hardship and a testament to parental love. How, even during the toughest times, mothers and fathers found a way to turn simple ingredients into a comforting experience for their children. The Chicken Salad Sandwich. The chicken salad sandwich was born from necessity, a way to stretch the meat from a single chicken to feed a family for days. After a hearty Sunday dinner and using leftovers for Monday's soup, any remaining chicken was finely chopped and mixed with mayonnaise to create a filling for multiple sandwiches. During the Depression and wartime, Cooks added diced celery, apples, or hard-boiled eggs to further stretch the mixture. The finer the chicken was chopped, the further it would go, creating a meal that provided protein and satisfaction without waste. These sandwiches were often served at church socials, with the crusts removed and cut into triangles, transforming everyday food into something special for little cost. Do you think these old-school sandwiches could make a comeback? Why or why not? We want to hear your thoughts. The mock chicken sandwich. When real chicken was out of reach, creative cooks invented the mock chicken sandwich, a clever substitute made from cheaper ingredients. Typically, coarsely ground Bologna or other inexpensive processed meats were mixed with cracker crumbs and seasonings to mimic the texture and flavor of chicken salad. During wartime meat rationing, this sandwich became a staple in factory cafeterias and school lunchrooms. The secret to its convincing flavor was in the seasoning: sage, celery, salt, and sometimes a drop of yellow food coloring to give it the same buttery color as chicken salad. Some variations even used cooked beans as the base instead of meat. The ham and cheese sandwich. While the ham and cheese sandwich is now a classic, it originally came from the careful management of precious resources. Deli ham, sliced paper thin, and a single slice of processed cheese could be stretched across multiple sandwiches, feeding a family with minimal ingredients. During the Depression, mothers often used just one slice of each to make sandwiches for the whole family, sometimes adding lettuce or mayonnaise to bulk it up. This simple combination provided a complete source of protein when meat alone was too expensive to have in large quantities. Some families even collected cheese rinds to melt into a spread, making it go further than regular sliced cheese. The chicken liver sandwich. When every part of the chicken had to be used, the chicken liver sandwich became a cost-effective and nutritious solution. Cooked and finely chopped with onions, then mixed with a little mayonnaise, chicken livers created rich, iron-packed sandwiches that were both filling and affordable. Rural families, especially those who raised their own chickens, relied on these sandwiches to ensure nothing went to waste. Some added hard-boiled eggs or relish to enhance the flavor, making it both economical and highly nutritious. Farm children often carried these sandwiches in their lunch pails, benefiting from the concentrated nutrition during their growing years. The anchovy paste sandwich. The anchovy paste sandwich became a working-class staple during tough times, where even a small tube of anchovy paste could stretch across multiple meals. Spread thinly on buttered bread, sometimes with sliced hard-boiled egg when available, it provided intense flavor and omega-3 fatty acids. Immigrant communities, particularly those from Mediterranean regions, embraced this sandwich, maintaining food traditions from their homelands despite poverty. The strong, savory flavor of anchovy paste ensured satisfaction even when ingredients were limited. Some added thin-sliced onion or a squeeze of lemon juice when possible to enhance the taste. Curried sardine salad sandwiches. Curried sardine salad sandwiches offer a bold, zesty combination of sardines and curry powder that makes for a truly extraordinary meal. Popular in mid-20th century America, especially after World War II, canned sardines became a budget-friendly staple. The unique recipe blends mashed sardines with aromatic curry powder, creamy mayonnaise, tangy lemon juice, and crunchy chopped celery, creating a flavorful spread with great texture. Spread this delicious mixture generously on your favorite bread and add fresh lettuce or cucumber slices for a satisfying crunch that complements the creamy filling. In England, variations might include chopped apples or raisins for a hint of sweetness, while American versions often feature hard-boiled eggs or capers for an extra punch of flavor. This sandwich is a perfect balance of savory, tangy, and crunchy, making it a memorable meal option. The Monte Cristo Sandwich. The Monte Cristo sandwich is a beloved American classic that became widely popular in the mid-20th century. Essentially a ham and cheese sandwich, it's dipped in egg or batter, then pan-fried or deep-fried to crispy perfection. Often seen as a variation of the French croque monsieur, the Monte Cristo can be enjoyed as a savory dish or a mix of savory and sweet. Some versions are dusted with powdered sugar and served with maple syrup or fruit preserves for a delightful contrast of flavors. Its rise in fame is partly due to being a standout menu item at Disneyland's Blue Bayou restaurant, where it became a crowd favorite. The Monte Cristo's combination of rich melted cheese, savory ham, and crispy golden exterior continues to make it a comforting and indulgent treat. Olive loaf sandwiches. Step back to the mid-20th century, when the olive loaf sandwich became a staple in American lunchboxes. This cold cut, made from a blend of ground pork, beef, and green olives, quickly gained popularity for its unique and savory flavor. Assembling the sandwich was simple. Layer slices of olive loaf with creamy mayonnaise or tangy mustard, crisp lettuce, and sometimes cheese, all between fresh slices of bread. It became a picnic and lunchbox favorite, often paired with potato chips or pickles for extra crunch. The olive loaf sandwich is a testament to how processed meats and cold cuts shaped American lunch culture, offering quick, flavorful, and versatile meal options. Ravioli sandwiches. Ravioli sandwiches are an unconventional yet fun twist on Italian cuisine, combining the beloved flavors of ravioli with the convenience of a sandwich. Likely emerging in response to the popularity of canned ravioli introduced by Chef Boyardee in the 1930s, these sandwiches quickly gained a following. The concept is simple. Place canned ravioli, filled with either meat or cheese, between slices of bread. To elevate the experience, the sandwich is often toasted or grilled, creating a satisfying contrast between the soft ravioli filling and crispy bread. Sometimes referred to as Italian sloppy joes or ravioli heroes, these sandwiches became especially popular among budget-conscious college students and anyone seeking a quick, hearty meal that blends comforting Italian flavors with the portability of a sandwich. Which sandwich brings back the most nostalgic memories for you? Tell us how it connects to your past. Creamed corn sandwich. The creamed corn sandwich is a nostalgic comfort food that takes us back to simpler times. This humble sandwich features creamed corn spread generously on buttered bread, offering a creamy and slightly sweet taste that provides comfort when ingredients were limited. The combination of the creamy corn and soft bread makes for a satisfying, hearty meal. Popular during times of scarcity, it reflects an era when homemade simplicity was treasured. The creamed corn sandwich continues to evoke memories of classic American comfort food, offering a taste of a bygone era that many still enjoy for its warm, familiar flavors. Macaroni and cheese loaf sandwich. Take a step back to mid-20th century America, where comfort food took on a creative new form. The macaroni and cheese loaf sandwich. This unique creation featured slices of macaroni and cheese loaf, a savory blend of pasta and ham shaped into a loaf, layered between slices of bread, often with mustard or mayonnaise for added flavor. Debuting in the 1950s, this sandwich quickly became a distinctive part of the American lunch repertoire. Families gathered around tables, savoring this peculiar yet beloved dish, often served with chips or pickles for an extra crunch. The macaroni and cheese loaf sandwich offered a practical way to enjoy the hearty taste of macaroni and cheese in a more portable, sandwich-friendly format. Deviled ham sandwiches. Deviled ham sandwiches became a popular choice in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, offering a flavorful, easy-to-make lunch. Deviled ham is made by grinding ham and mixing it with zesty spices like hot sauce, cayenne pepper, or mustard, giving it a kick of flavor. The term deviled refers to the practice of adding spicy seasonings to food, a tradition that dates back to the 18th century. In 1868, the William Underwood Company in Boston began producing canned deviled ham, which became famous for its long shelf life and its distinctive devil logo, one of the oldest food trademarks in the U.S. To make a deviled ham sandwich, simply mix ground ham with mayonnaise, mustard, and spices, then spread the mixture onto slices of bread. For added texture and flavor, you can include lettuce or pickles. The Lard Sandwich. The Lard Sandwich is perhaps the most humble of all poor man's meals, a stark symbol of bare-bones sustenance. Simply spread rendered animal fat between two slices of bread, and you have a filling meal that provided essential calories when nothing else was available. In Appalachian regions and among rural families, this simple sandwich was a quick source of energy, often enhanced with a sprinkle of salt for a savory option or sugar for something sweeter. While it wasn't nutritionally balanced, the lard sandwich kept people going. Those who had access to home-rendered lard often claimed it had a superior flavor compared to store-bought varieties. On special occasions, families might add a thin layer of molasses for a sweet twist. This sandwich's high-calorie content made it especially popular with physical laborers, providing them with the energy needed to power through demanding workdays. The Sloppy Joe. The Sloppy Joe is a classic American sandwich that became a household favorite in the mid-20th century, made with ground beef, onions, tomato sauce or ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, and a blend of seasonings. This messy, flavorful sandwich is served on a hamburger bun. The origins of the Sloppy Joe are a subject of debate. Some claim it was created by a bar owner in Havana, Cuba in 1917, while others trace it back to Sioux City, Iowa in the 1930s. By the 1940s, Sloppy Joes were firmly established as a popular sandwich across the United States. These sandwiches not only reflect the culinary trends of their time, but also offer a glimpse into the flavors and preferences that helped shape mid-20th century American cuisine. Corned beef tongue sandwich. For those willing to step outside the usual, the corned beef tongue sandwich offers a truly unique flavor experience. Made with slices of seasoned, slow-cooked corned beef tongue, this sandwich delivers a distinctive taste and tender texture that's unlike anything else. Once layered between slices of fresh bread, it becomes a hearty, memorable meal. This sandwich reflects a time when creativity and resourcefulness in the kitchen were essential, turning every part of the animal into something delicious. Spam and pineapple sandwiches. Spam and pineapple sandwiches capture a uniquely American love for sweet and savory flavors, a combination that gained huge popularity during World War II. Spam, first introduced to the U.S. military in 1937, quickly became a household staple. This sandwich pairs crispy fried slices of Spam with sweet, slightly caramelized pineapple rings, layered between toasted bread for a perfect flavor contrast. Often finished with a swipe of mayonnaise or a slice of cheese, it reflects the growing Hawaiian influence on American cuisine, especially after Hawaii became a state in 1959. Victory Sandwich. The Victory Sandwich stands as a powerful symbol of post-war optimism and kitchen ingenuity. Born from an era when every ingredient counted, it was traditionally made with buttered bread, a modest smear of mustard or butter, and whatever cold cuts or vegetables were available. Simple, hearty, and satisfying, it became a culinary emblem of triumph over hardship. Today, chefs honor the Victory Sandwich's humble roots by reinventing it with artisanal spreads, pickled vegetables, and gourmet twists, blending old-world resourcefulness with modern flavors. 20. Working man's dinners. No one makes any more. Ever wonder what real working man's dinners looked like? Born from long shifts, tight budgets, and tougher times, these meals were built to fill you up and keep you going. Simple, hearty, and full of grit. They're the forgotten flavors of a world that didn't waste a thing. Let's bring them back to the table. Ham hocks and cabbage. You didn't need a clock to know when ham hocks and cabbage were on the stove. You could smell it from halfway down the street. That rich, smoky scent would sneak through every crack in the windows and drift right out to the sidewalk. Back then, Ham hocks were almost a giveaway at the butcher's. And cabbage? Even cheaper. But when you threw them together into an old battered enamel pot and let them simmer all afternoon, magic happened. The ham hocks got so tender you could pull the meat off with just the edge of a spoon. And the cabbage? It soaked up all that smoky, salty broth until every bite was packed with flavor. No one measured anything. No one needed a recipe. You just tossed it all in, turned the burner low, and let time do the work. Dinner wasn't fancy, but it was reliable. Families would stretch it for days, add some beans if you had them, pour in a little more water if you didn't. It always found a way to feed everyone. If there was bread on the table, you dunked it. If not, you just tilted the bowl and drank it down. Either way, it warmed you up for whatever tomorrow had in store. Braised rabbit with root vegetables. Back in the day, resourcefulness wasn't just a skill, it was survival. And nothing says that better than a pot of braised rabbit bubbling away in a heavy cast iron skillet. This wasn't store-bought meat wrapped in plastic. This was the real deal. Rabbits caught right out of your own backyard. When meat was a rare treat, rabbits gave working families a lean, dependable source of protein that didn't cost a dime. Just a little patience and a good aim. Hunters would head out early, and by midday, you'd see them come back with 1 or 2 rabbits slung over their shoulders. Skinning them took just minutes, and from there, the pot got going. A quick sear in hot fat, then a slow, gentle braise with whatever the garden was willing to give. Maybe some carrots, a few tough turnips, an onion if you got lucky that week. Rosemary might make an appearance if it grew wild nearby. There were no fancy sauces, no need for them. The broth and vegetables told the whole story. And the rule was simple. If you passed through the kitchen while that pot was on, you got a bowl. Meals like that faded as folks drifted away from country life. But for those who lived it, this dish is a memory of how tough and tender life used to be. Which of these classic working man's dinners do you remember eating or still make today? I'd love to hear your version. Cold meatloaf sandwich. Sometimes the best meals didn't even need a stove. If you had yesterday's meatloaf sitting in the fridge, you were already halfway to something special. The cold meatloaf sandwich. It was the ultimate blue-collar grab-and-go meal. No reheating, no fancy prep. Just slice it, stack it, and you were out the door. This was the working man's bento box. Simple, fast, and satisfying. A thick slab of chilled meatloaf, a good squirt of yellow mustard, and 2 slices of soft white bread. That's it. No frills, no fuss. And somehow, it tasted even better the next day. The fat in the meatloaf firmed up overnight, the seasonings had time to meld, and the mustard gave it just enough tang to keep things interesting. You could eat it at the kitchen table, perched on a steel beam, or straight from your dented lunch pail. Some folks like to dress it up with a pickle spear on the side, or maybe a thin slice of raw onion tucked inside. But at its heart, it stayed the same. Humble, filling, and completely dependable. Beef heart stew. When meat was scarce, or when you just needed to stretch a dollar to its very limit, you reached for something most people today wouldn't even think about. Beef heart. It wasn't a showpiece cut, it wasn't meant to impress. But if you knew what you were doing, beef heart could turn into a meal you'd remember. This was Depression-era cooking at its finest, not because people loved the idea of it, but because it was cheap, tough, and available when little else was. You started by trimming the heart carefully, slicing it into manageable chunks, and browning them up in a big pot with a little oil or fat. It didn't take much, just enough to get some color on the meat and build up that deep, beefy flavor. Then you added broth or water, enough to just cover the meat. Some folks tossed in a bay leaf or a splash of vinegar to help break down the muscle and give the stew a richer depth. It simmered low and slow, sometimes for hours, until the heart went from tough to tender. Parsnips often joined the pot, adding a sweet, earthy balance that mellowed out the boldness of the meat. Serve it up with some rice, a slab of bread, or just grab a spoon and eat it straight from the bowl. Did your family have their own twist on any of these old-school dishes? Feel free to share it with me and our audience. Smothered pork chops. When you were craving something a little crispier, a little richer, and absolutely swimming in gravy, you grabbed a skillet and a pack of pork chops, because smothered pork chops weren't just dinner. They were an experience. You started with thick, bone-in chops, seasoned up and dropped into a hot pan. They sizzled the second they hit the surface, the fat crisping around the edges and filling the whole kitchen with that mouth-watering smell that pulled people straight to the table before you even called them. Once the chops were good and browned, you made magic with what was left in the pan. A spoonful of flour to soak up the drippings, a splash of broth or even just water, and whatever spices you could scrape together. Black pepper, maybe a little paprika if you had it. Stirred into a silky, rich gravy. The pork chops went right back in, covered up, and left to simmer low and slow until they were fall-off-the-bone tender, soaking up every ounce of that golden sauce. You served them with nothing fancy, just a slice or two of white bread straight from the plastic bag, perfect for mopping up every drop. No one left the table hungry. No one dared leave gravy behind. Cabbage roll casserole. When you didn't have the time or the patience to roll cabbage leaves one by one like Grandma used to, you found a faster way to get that same comfort onto the table. Enter cabbage roll casserole, better known in kitchens everywhere as Lazy Man's stuffed cabbage. You took the heart of a good cabbage roll, ground beef cooked up with chopped onions and garlic, mixed with warm cooked rice, seasoned with a little salt, pepper, and a hearty pour of tomato sauce, and skipped the rolling altogether. Instead, you layered it all into a baking dish like a rustic lasagna. A handful of chopped cabbage, a layer of beef and rice, more cabbage, more sauce, until the whole dish was stacked and ready. As it baked, the tomato sauce soaked deep into the rice, the beef melted into the cabbage, and the whole thing turned into a bubbling, steamy, fork-tender mess of pure comfort. It didn't come out looking fancy, but it smelled like Sunday dinner in a house packed with hungry kids and no guarantee of leftovers. Some folks added a dash of vinegar for a little tang or a dollop of sour cream right on top. However you served it, it was hearty, it was homey, and somehow, like all the best meals, it tasted even better the next day. Salisbury steak with mushroom gravy. When folks were craving real comfort but didn't want a pile of dishes afterward, they left the roast behind and built something just as good right in a single skillet. Salisbury steak wasn't steakhouse fancy, but it brought all the cozy, diner-style flavor that families needed. And then some. You started with ground beef, mixing in some breadcrumbs, an egg, a pinch of salt and pepper, and maybe a splash of Worcestershire sauce if you were lucky enough to have a bottle tucked in the pantry. Then you shaped that mix into oval patties, pressed just flat enough to get a good sear in a hot skillet. Once they browned up nice and golden on both sides, you pulled them out and started the real star of the show, the mushroom gravy. You tossed some sliced mushrooms into the pan, maybe a few onions too, if they were hanging around. A quick sprinkle of flour soaked up all that beefy goodness, and then in went a splash of broth, stirred until it thickened into a bubbling, savory gravy. The patties went back in to soak it all up, and by the time you served it over mashed potatoes, boxed or homemade, didn't matter, with some buttery peas on the side, you had a meal that felt way fancier than it really was. And the next day, smash a patty between two slices of bread with some leftover gravy, and you had one of the best sandwiches you'd ever taste. Pork neck bones with gravy. When you were cooking Southern style and needed to stretch what little meat you had, you didn't head for the steaks or chops. You reached for pork neck bones, humble, bony, and quietly legendary in kitchens that knew how to work magic with less. Neck bones were never the first pick at the butcher counter, but smart cooks knew better. They were cheap, sold in big packs, and packed more flavor than you'd ever guess. You started by tossing them into a hot skillet with a little oil, browning them until the fat crisped up and the smell had everyone wandering into the kitchen, asking when dinner would be ready. Next came the chopped onions, stirred right into the drippings, sizzling as they pulled every bit of browned flavor off the bottom of the pan. Then you poured in water or broth, scraping up the good stuff, and let it simmer low and slow. Hours later, the meat would be tender, sliding off the bone, and the cooking liquid would thicken into a deep, savory gravy. Oatmeal meatloaf. When there wasn't enough meat to go around, and there often wasn't, you had to get creative. That's where oatmeal meatloaf came in. This wasn't just regular meatloaf. This was meatloaf that made do, that turned a little into a lot, with the help of one simple pantry staple: oats. When breadcrumbs ran out or went stale, you grabbed a handful of oats. Not fancy oats, just dry, plain, straight from the canister oats. You started with ground beef, cracked in an egg, poured in a splash of milk, and mixed in the oats. They didn't just hold everything together, they added real substance, soaking up every bit of flavor while giving the loaf a hearty bite that made every slice feel like more. A pinch of salt, a good shake of black pepper, maybe a chopped onion if you had one rolling around the bottom of the pantry. You pressed it all into a loaf pan, slathered a thick layer of ketchup across the top, and baked it until the edges crisped up and the top turned sweet and caramelized. Thick slices next to canned green beans or a heap of mashed potatoes made for a meal that filled stomachs and stretched budgets without a second thought. Gravy was optional, but trust me, nobody ever turned it down. Macaroni and tomatoes with bacon drippings. If cabbage wasn't your thing, or the fridge was looking a little too empty, you could still pull off a hot, hearty meal with just dry pasta, a can of tomatoes, and whatever bacon grease was left sitting in the jar. That's how you ended up with a Southern pantry classic: macaroni and tomatoes with bacon drippings. You started by boiling elbow macaroni until it was just tender, not too soft. Drain it, but don't wait too long. You wanted it hot, ready to soak up flavor. Then you tossed it straight into a hot skillet slicked with leftover bacon grease. Even if there wasn't a speck of actual bacon in sight, that smoky, salty flavor clung to every noodle like a memory. Next came the canned tomatoes, juice and all, stirred right in with a big wooden spoon. Let it simmer just enough to bubble and melt together. A little salt, a shake of black pepper, maybe a pinch of sugar if the tomatoes were too sharp. And that was it. Every house had their spin on it, but even the simplest version was smoky, tangy, and weirdly comforting. Hungarian chicken paprikash. When you had a little chicken left in the fridge, a scoop of sour cream hanging on by a thread, and a heavy hand with the paprika, you could whip up a dish that tasted like it came straight out of Europe, even if it was just another Wednesday night. That's the magic of Hungarian chicken paprikash. You started with bone-in chicken, legs, thighs, maybe whatever parts you had left, and browned them up in a deep skillet until the skin turned crisp and golden, filling the kitchen with that mouth-watering, savory smell. Then came the onions, sliced thin and cooked down until they melted into a sweet, golden tangle. But the real heart of the dish, the paprika, and not just a sprinkle, you dumped in a generous handful, turning everything a rich, earthy red. Some folks tossed in garlic if they had it, others kept it simple. A little flour helped thicken the sauce, and then you poured in water or broth to loosen it up into a gravy that practically begged for bread. Right before serving, you stirred in a big scoop of sour cream, making the sauce creamy, velvety, and rich. You ladled it over wide, buttery egg noodles, perfect for catching every last drop. Parsley was optional. Flavor was mandatory. Canned tamale pie. When meat was scarce and the pantry shelves were starting to look a little bare, you could always count on a few cans and a box of cornbread mix to pull off something special. That's where canned tamale pie came in. A dish built from memory, not recipes, and packed with pure pantry magic. It was Tex-Mex-inspired comfort food, designed to stretch whatever you had into enough for everyone. You started by browning a pound of ground beef, stirring in a can of corn, a can of tomatoes or tomato sauce, and tossing in a handful of spices. Maybe chili powder, maybe cumin, or just a big shake of paprika if that's what you could find. Sometimes a can of beans would find its way in, making the dish even heartier. Once everything was bubbling and smelling like you'd been cooking for hours, you poured it into a baking dish. Then came the best part, a quick cornbread batter made from a box, poured right over the top like a warm golden blanket. Some folks tossed in a little shredded cheese for good measure. Others crumbled saltines for some extra crunch. It baked until the cornbread puffed up and the filling bubbled at the edges. Every scoop was a steaming mix of beef, spice, sweet corn, and fluffy cornbread. It wasn't fancy. It was survival food dressed up like a Sunday dinner. And somehow, it always hit the spot. Creamed tuna on egg noodles. It might have come out of a can, but creamed tuna on egg noodles had a way of carrying dinner like a heavyweight champ. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't pretty, but it hit every note you needed, cheap, fast, and comforting in a way that stuck with you. You started by making a simple white sauce, the kind every home cook had memorized. Melt a little butter in a pan, whisk in a spoonful of flour, then slowly pour in the milk until it thickened up smooth and velvety. Into that creamy base, you'd flake in a can of drained tuna, salty, briny, and just hearty enough. A pinch of salt and pepper, maybe a little garlic powder if you were feeling fancy. Frozen peas were almost always tossed in too, a pop of green, a tiny hint of sweetness to balance out the richness. Meanwhile, a pot of egg noodles boiled away on the stove, wide, ribbon-like, soft, but not falling apart. Once drained, you folded them right into the sauce until everything was coated and steaming hot. Thank you for watching. To continue with more content, comment yes to let us know you're still following. Boiled dinner. When you only had enough to make one good, hearty pot of food, you pulled out the biggest pot you owned and made boiled dinner. The name sounds plain, but trust me, it didn't tell the whole story. This dish was pure factory, town, survival. And it was far more satisfying than it had any right to be. It started with a slab of corned beef, salty, brined, and tough as old leather, until you gave it the gift of time. You dropped that meat into a pot of water and let it bubble low and slow. Then came the vegetables, added one after another. Whole potatoes, just scrubbed clean, skins still on. Big wedges of cabbage stacked in like leafy bricks. Thick-cut carrots tossed right on top. As it all simmered, the broth turned cloudy and rich. The kitchen filled with a deep, peppery smell, with just enough of that sharp cabbage bite to make your stomach growl. Some folks couldn't resist slathering a thick slice of mustard over their beef once it hit the plate. City chicken, mock chicken legs. When chicken was out of reach, or when you needed a hearty meal without breaking the bank, you could always pull off a little kitchen magic. Enter city chicken, or as it was known in many old factory towns, mock chicken legs. No actual chicken involved, but trust me, no one complained. This dish was born in butcher shops, where pork was a cheaper option than poultry. To make it, you took cubes of pork, sometimes veal, and stacked them tight on wooden skewers, just like a drumstick. Then came the fun part. You dipped each skewer into beaten egg, rolled it in breadcrumbs or crushed crackers, and either pan-fried or oven-baked it until golden and crisp. Some folks seared the meat first and finished it in the oven, wrapping it in foil to lock in the moisture. The result? Juicy meat on a stick, coated in a crunchy shell that made you forget it wasn't actually chicken. It was kid-friendly, lunchbox ready, and just fancy enough to feel like a treat. Served with mashed potatoes, gravy, or just a slice of white bread, city chicken brought a little joy to tables where the budget was tight, but the effort to make a meal was high. Hamburger gravy on mashed potatoes. When there wasn't time to skewer, bread, or cook anything complicated, but you still wanted that classic diner-style comfort, hamburger gravy on mashed potatoes was the answer. No recipe required, just a skillet, a little flour, and a whole lot of gravy. It didn't need an introduction. It just needed a fork. You started by browning a pound of ground beef in a skillet, breaking it up into crumbles as it sizzled, a pinch of salt, a crack of black pepper, and maybe some chopped onion or garlic if you had the time. Once the beef was cooked, you pushed it to the side and whisked in a spoonful of flour right into the drippings, stirring it up to form the base of the gravy. Slowly, you added milk or water, watching as the liquid bubbled and thickened into a rich, creamy gravy that was practically begging to be poured over a heap of mashed potatoes. Whether they were homemade or made from a box, those potatoes were hot, soft, and ready to soak up every last drop of gravy. Chicken livers with rice and peppers. Now, if we're talking about budget-friendly second chances, you can't skip over chicken livers with rice and peppers. This dish made something small, something most folks wouldn't even look twice at, into a meal that stuck to your ribs and didn't let go. You always knew when this was cooking. The second those livers hit the hot pan with diced onions and chopped bell peppers, the whole house would fill with that rich, mouth-watering smell that felt like Sunday afternoon. Chicken livers were loaded with protein, iron, and big flavor, but they were dirt cheap because, truth be told, a lot of people didn't want them. That was their loss. The rice stretched the meal farther. The onions and peppers added a little crunch and sweetness to balance out the richness. And the best part? You didn't need a whole kitchen to pull it off. One burner, one cast iron skillet, maybe a clove of garlic, or a splash of hot sauce if you were feeling fancy, and you had dinner on the table in under half an hour. Breaded veal cutlets. When the weekend rolled around and folks wanted something a little fried, a little fancy, without blowing the budget, they reached for the shallow pan, the breadcrumbs, and a thin slice of veal. Breaded veal cutlets were the upgrade you didn't expect, but always appreciated. It made dinner feel like a payday treat, even when payday was still a few days away. The process was quick, simple, and pure magic. You dipped a thin slice of veal into flour, then a beaten egg, and finally a coat of breadcrumbs. Into the hot skillet it went, sizzling the second it hit the oil. That crust formed fast, golden, crispy, and full of flavor, while the inside stayed tender and soft. It wasn't a thick, juicy steak, but it had crunch, richness, and just enough class to make dinner feel special. Right alongside it, a big scoop of instant mashed potatoes, fluffy, creamy, steaming hot, with a pat of butter melting into a golden puddle right in the middle. Maybe there was gravy, maybe not, but honestly, the cutlet didn't need much help. It carried the plate all by itself. Pantry beef casserole. Every now and then, you just needed to go full casserole mode. Open up the pantry, grab whatever cans were sitting around, smash up some crackers, and let the oven pull it all together. This wasn't about fancy. It was about feeding a family fast with something hot, hearty, and oddly comforting. You started by browning up a pound of ground beef in a skillet. Then you'd toss in a can of corn, maybe a scoop of tomato paste or whatever tomato sauce you could scrape out of the cupboard. A few shakes of chili powder gave it a little kick, and if you had onions or bell peppers lying around, you chopped those up and threw them in for some crunch. Once everything was mixed and ready, it went straight into a battered baking dish. Now, here's where the magic happened. The topping. Some swore by crushed saltines for that salty crunch. Others mixed up a quick cornmeal batter to bake into a soft, golden blanket right over the top. Either way, the end result was sweet, salty, smoky, and way more satisfying than it had any right to be. Pickled pig's feet. Now, if you're ready for something a little more vinegary, a little more wobbly, and a whole lot more controversial, let's talk about pickled pig's feet. You either loved them, or you pretended they didn't exist. There wasn't much middle ground. But for the folks who gave them a chance, pickled pig's feet were unforgettable. Tangy, rich, and packed with bold flavor. You'd usually spot them first in an old glass jar, sitting proudly on the counter of a dusty bar or tucked away on a neighbor's kitchen shelf. Those jars held more than just food. They held a dare. Inside, the pig's feet, soaked for days, even weeks, in a briny bath of vinegar, garlic, and a handful of rough spices. And when it was finally time to dig in, they were usually served up alongside some simple boiled potatoes to help cut through that sharp, mouth-puckering tang. This wasn't delicate, fancy dining. This was blue-collar soul food, heavy on the collagen, rich in protein, and dripping with the kind of working man's pride that didn't care about appearances. Sure, the texture might have been a little jiggly for some tastes, but for those who grew up with it, pickled pig's feet were pure comfort on a plate. Oxtail stew. When meat got scarce, and it often did, families turned to cuts most folks wouldn't even glance at today. One of the biggest underdogs of the kitchen? Oxtail. It wasn't fancy, and it sure wasn't something you bragged about. But if you had a little patience, oxtail could turn into something unforgettable. You started by searing those bony pieces right in the bottom of a heavy pot. Bone, fat, scraps. It all went in. The smell was incredible, deep, savory, and rich, curling through every corner of the house. Once the meat was browned up good, you'd toss in onions, garlic, chopped carrots, and a handful of barley. Then you covered it with water or broth, slapped a lid on it, and let it go. Slow and low. For hours. That's when the magic happened. The meat would loosen, sliding off the bones in tender ribbons. The marrow would melt into the broth, making it thick and silky. The carrots sweetened the pot, the barley made it hearty, and you didn't need anything else but a spoon. Maybe a crust of bread if you had it. Stuffed bell peppers. If you thought stretching a meal with chicken livers was clever, just wait until you hear what folks used to do with a pound of ground beef and a few bell peppers. Stuffed bell peppers might have looked fancy coming out of the oven, but really it was pure working-class math. You took a pound of beef, folded in a good helping of rice, maybe a little tomato paste if you had some, and seasoned it with whatever dried herbs you could find in the back of the cupboard. Then, you packed that mixture into hollowed-out peppers like little edible suitcases. A baking dish, a little sauce thrown together from pantry scraps, tomato if you were lucky, maybe broth, or even just seasoned water. And into the oven they went, bubbling away. Every stuffed pepper gave you meat, starch, and a vegetable, all in one bite. No extra sides needed. It was the kind of meal that could stretch across a week if you had to, and nobody at the table would complain. Some folks sprinkled breadcrumbs or a little cheese on top if they could spare it. Others chopped up whatever was lying around to bulk up the filling. Let me know in the comments if I missed any of your favorite forgotten sandwiches. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out other videos in this series for more nostalgic meals from the past. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Who remembers? With someone who loves a taste of history. Thanks for watching.